Good afternoon, folks. How's everyone today?
Good.
Thank you for being here. We've got a very nice turnout, so we're going to go ahead and get started on our presentation today. Why are you here today? Well, for most of you, it's because your member number was drawn randomly because it ended in the number 1, 3, or 5. Why 1, 3, or 5? Because last time we used 2, 4, and 6. We wanted to mix it up. So the rest of you are here is because you volunteered, and thank you for that. For everyone that's here today, this is extremely valuable for us. Once we filled up with the original randomly selected, we tried to open as many spots as we could, which is why you see us moving chairs right now, because there was such an interest in it that we decided to take just as many as we could fit into the room. So thank you for being here. The other reason you're here is because 11 months ago, 500 members stuffed themselves into the ballroom. Who was here that day? Okay, yeah. In addition to those 500, 120 viewed the presentation by Wooden Partners and our Long Range Planning Committee online. And the topic was, hey, it's been a lot of change lately. We've got a lot of new faces, got a lot of new folks. We're nearing build out. Now's the time to address our master planning needs for the future. So let's get started with that conversation. 366 of you filled out a questionnaire that helped us prioritize what areas the general community thought that we needed perhaps some improvement in long term. Not right away, but perhaps down the road. You're going to hear about some of those today. The most important thing, we call this a stack ranking for obvious reasons. The most important thing here was people found that they wanted to do something better at the Morgan River waterfront, that it just was a little underwhelming and we could do something better down there. Very closely next to that was additional dining opportunities at the club. We talked about fitness center and workout areas, also ranked very highly, as was meeting and function space, which is what we do down here. Additional marina wet slips and focus on the marina was also fairly highly rated, as was green space beautification and tree plant back. Maintain the natural beauty while we can, in spite of the fact that we're building out. That was important. You're going to see presentations of all this stuff today, and each presenter is going to address how they have opted to protect as much green space and plant back anything possible in their designated locations. So there's a couple of planned and necessary projects that we're going to talk about today. And the first presenter today is Ted Barber. He's going to talk about the obvious one, which is the replacement of the entry bridge and the causeway complex. That has to happen one way or another. You will be voting on something to do with that in February. Another necessary project you've been hearing about for 2 or 3 years is our lack of irrigation water for golf courses and common property throughout the island. We have been working an action plan for 2 years on that. We've accomplished a lot, yet we've accomplished very little, if you can say both of those phrases in the same sentence. What we do know is that we are now treating this project as a long-range capital item to be included in the reserve study that is funded by your capital dollars in each and every month. So we are not going to be talking about that as an added project. We're going to be talking that in terms of future golf course irrigation improvements will include addressing the water shortage then. So we will not be talking about that today. The other additional aspirational projects are the ones that I mentioned earlier. So here we are today. This is the journey that we've come across from the master plan presentation a year ago, establishing priorities, proposing action plans. You're here to see those proposed action plans today. Your focus is to help us decide what to take to the town hall meetings so that we can generate a consensus of what should or shouldn't be done. After that, we're going to add a little step in here. We're going to go back out to the community with a comprehensive survey. That's going to give us a little bit more direction on where we're going to go. And then finally, in February, we'll be voting this. Anything that's decided and recommended. If anything gets recommended, we'll be installing an implementation team to carry the project forward. So what can you expect today? You can expect 2 hours of presentations. After that, we try to move briskly, but there's a lot of information to convey. So at the end of that, we will have question and answer. We are asking you to hold your questions to the end so we don't derail any of the presentations. I do want to mention we are going to be distributing a copy of this focus group presentation after the last focus groups are done, which will be tomorrow afternoon. We'll be ending at 5:30 tomorrow. We have 2 more to go after this one for a total of 9. It does us absolutely no good if you leave here today and do not fill out a feedback form. You are just a listener. We need input. There's a lot of moving pieces here. We don't know exactly what to propose. We're putting some sample bundles, we call them, together just to make it easier for you. You may or may not like what we suggested. That's fine. Tell us. But we had to start somewhere. It's important that you fill out the focus group questionnaire. It starts with a bridge question. It moves on to ranking these specific bundles that I talked about. You'll hear more about them later. 1, 2, and 3. A lot of people are missing putting the ranks in these boxes here, 1, 2, and 3. And then tell us how very likely are you to vote for each bundle, or very unlikely, 1, 2, or 3, because that's the number of bundles you're going to see today, sample bundles. And then on the second page, please turn it over. You're going to rank here, knowing what I know now, including what these projects could look like and how much they might cost. Would I rank them the same way a year later? Is that project still as important to me now that I know what it could look like and how much it's going to cost? So that's going to be important for us to gauge where we've moved from a year ago when you initially ranked this with no information to where you rank it now with a lot more information. So I think that covers it. We're going to get started with the bridge.
Thanks, Ted. Good afternoon to everybody. My name is Ted Barber. Some of you may or may not know me. I'll tell you a little bit about myself in just a moment. But let me talk about the bridge replacement feasibility study that we've been working on since January of this year. We're doing it in concert with a company called BMA out of Jupiter, Florida. They are a bridge designers, marina designers, seawalls, docks. That's what they do. They've designed several bridges up and down the East Coast. Recent project close to us, they just did a replacement project of the Folly Island Pier. So they just did that project. So we worked with them and worked with them since January. So I had the pleasure of working with some gentlemen who bring a lot of experience to the team. That's one thing about Dog Paw is that we have a lot of people who have a lot of experience and are willing to share their expertise with everyone. So let me talk about the team. First of all, Clay Fales. Clay's in the room with us. Clay is your DIOA president. You elected him to the board 3 years ago. Clay is a professional engineer. His background is civil engineering. He owned Hill Engineering in Pennsylvania, which they did all types of civil engineering work, roadways. They also did dam designs. They also did surveying. So he had his own surveying company. So if you needed your lot surveyed, Clay could do that for you. Well, his people would, I guess I should say. Jack Sovereign, many of you probably know Jack. You'll hear more about him as well. He worked on the community center project as well. Jack worked for the Hunt Company for 33 years. They're a large commercial construction company. He was a senior vice president with that corporation. He's also a professional engineer. 2 things Jack is famous for building. He built the Swan and Dolphin hotels at Disney World. And then John Millerisi, many of you may or may not know John and Ann. I think Ann's in charge of the Conservancy this year. John is a retired deputy director for the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources. John spent over 30 years there, and he was responsible for all marine sources in the state of South Carolina. So one of the things he brought to the team is he provided input into regulatory issues associated with the marsh front and the wetlands of South Carolina. So he has that regulatory background. A little bit about me. I've been here since 2003, full-time since 2013. Spent 33 years with the Coca-Cola Company. You've probably heard of that company out of Atlanta, Georgia. I retired as an international director of flavor operations, ran plants all over the world. So I don't go on cruises and I don't go to Europe because I've been on every continent except Antarctica and Australia. So I've been in almost every country as well. Few things I've done since I've been here. When I first came here, I was asked to lead a team to design and install the new outdoor pool. How many of you enjoy that design in that pool? I did that project. The second project I worked on was the replacement of 11.9 miles of cart paths on 2 of the golf courses here at Dalton Island. I worked with a great team of folks on that to do that project. Turned out very well. It was a tough project, but even in the middle of a member guest, we didn't have any cart paths, but it turned out well. Third project I've done on Dalton is I led a team that helped do the renovation of the Carolina Ballroom. Many of you probably remember what that used to look like and what it looks like today. And then the last project, which actually was the smallest in capital expense, but one of the most controversial on Dalton Island, was the construction of the pickleball complex, because everybody had a big opinion about that one. But it turned out well. And we've also had a lot of feedback on that one and the fact that it is one of the best facilities in the Low Country. So let's talk about what I'm going to share with you today. I'll talk about what we have completed, talk about a risk assessment analysis that we did of our bridge causeway complex. I'm going to share some design elements of bridges today. I'm going to give you a couple of schematic layouts of what's being proposed. And I'll also share an implementation timeline with you today. So what we've done a geotechnical analysis of the actual causeways. Now, everybody talks about the bridge, but the bridge is what goes over Jenkins Creek. But there are 2 causeways that make up the bridge causeway complex, right? The bridge itself is only 184 feet long, but the causeways total are 855 feet. And those are the things that connect the bridge pieces together. We also surveyed all of that land up there so we can understand the elevations and what we're dealing with. We also have held preliminary regulatory meetings with all these alphabet soup agencies that you see up here, because those are all the ones that we're going to have to interact with in any replacement that we do. We also looked at all of the previous bridge condition reports and repairs and rehabs that have been done over the period. We've also identified all of the utilities that cross in that area. And we've also done preliminary layout. So I'm going to share all that. So in our risk assessment, when we went through this and discussed it, we came up with this statement, which basically says that if we lose the bridge or any of the causeway complex, it is a significant impact to us as residents. And it's a life safety issue. Therefore, the tolerance is very low. I think you would agree with that, right? We can't get on and off the island. That's an issue, especially if you can't get the bills. So let's talk about all these rehabs. I know Ted Bartlett has sent out a lot of communications about JMT and what they have done over the years, but I want to go all the way back for those of you who are newer here. In 2015, we did our first rehab project on that actual concrete bridge structure, and we did 24 repairs. In 16, they said it would last about 10 to 15 years. That would be 26 to 31. Then in 2020, they found 34 more defects. They still recommended replacement in 2030. Then in 22, they did 37 individual concrete repairs. And in 23, the report that JMT sent us said that they predicted exponential increase in deterioration. Okay, exponential. And future patching may not be an option. And that's from their report. This is actually a statement from their last report. If you read through that, basically what that report says is due to the delamination and the strand corrosion, that bridge is a box beam construction. So it's like a big concrete box with strands of wire in them, basically cabling that holds that together. And it's taking up salt water, and the chloride in the salt water is causing the stranding to corrode. And they say that it is doing that in an exponential rate, and they feel that the bridge is at that condition. So hence that's why we're here today. The photograph on the right shows the corrosion of the strand supporting structures of the box beam concrete that you see underneath the bridge. And on the left is a repair, a typical repair that's been done over the years. And this part is where they've cleaned it off. You can still see the corrosion on the cabling. And that's the actual wire lath that they put up there to put the hydraulic cement on to make the repair. So let's talk about elevation, which is important, of what we need to do in the future and where we are today. So the current substructure of the bridge is at high water, basically. So the bottom of the bridge, when we have really high tides, the water touches the bottom of it and splashes up on it. And it will continue to cause that deterioration. It's not going to slow down, as GMT said in their report. And when we have storms or real high water events, like when we have king tides, that puts the roadway at risk as well. And the current bridge deck is 1 foot above the 10-year storm surge, and it's 18 inches below the 50-year storm surge. Now, as I said, I've been here since 2003, and we've had 2 events that have overtopped the bridge. One of them was Matthew, and what was the other? So that bridge has been overtopped twice. Now, the current causeways are just inches above that storm, that 10-year storm level, and NOAA predicts that in the next 30 years, we're going to have about another 12 inches of sea rise. Okay? Got to take all that into consideration. So we also did geotechnical analysis of the causeways. Remember, it's the longest portion of the bridge complex. And what we did, you may have seen it one day when you're driving on the island. You saw a big rig out there, looked like a drilling machine. And what it was doing is it did borings all the way down into the subsurface of the causeways. And what we found when they did that analysis, and this is a civil engineering thing, is that we've got some issues with the asphalt. The causeways are up and down in elevation. And if we decided we wanted to raise the causeways, we'd have to widen them. But the most important thing that we found that was very concerning to us is when we bored down and got to the 7-foot depth, we found that the causeways are unstable. So if you were going to pile dirt on something that was unstable, do you think that would be wise? No. So based on all of this analysis that we've done up to this date, and the impacts based on the risk assessment that we shared with you today, is the bridge needs to be replaced within the next 5 years. Okay, that's the goal. So why are causeways important? How many of you have been to Sanibel Island, Florida?
Yeah.
This is the bridge causeway complex that leads to Sanibel Island. You may have driven across this. Now, these bridges at Sanibel have been replaced in recent history, but this middle causeway was built in 1964 by bringing in dirt as well as pumping sand from the bay to build it up. And you can see what happened a year ago, this month, still September, right? Yeah, still September, when Ian went through. And you can see it breached it twice. So that's what you have to be concerned about as well. Now, what's interesting about this is that Florida DOT was able to mobilize and repair that in 15 days, working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Now, remember that because I'm going to bring up a point about that. But they're still working on that today. It's not finished a year later. They're still working. So let's talk about where our elevations are of our bridge. So I talked about that 100-year storm. That's at 10.9 feet elevation. 50 years, 8.7, and our bridge is at 7.1 feet. The 10-year storm is 6. Do you see how close that is? South Carolina now requires that a bridge deck, if you deal with DOT, has to be at least 11 feet minimum of the existing elevation. And again, there's that 12 inches. So we got to take that into consideration of anything that we do. So let's talk about some things that we looked at, possibilities of what could happen. First of all, we talked about raising the causeway. Now, raising the causeway would cause us to have to widen it because we have to be able to carry the dirt, the load of the dirt. But also what we found is there's regulatory requirements that are different for that, and also maintaining traffic during construction and dealing with the utility crossings. Now, this is your current Google Earth view of what you drive on. This is Palawanna. This is Dotah Drive, Palawanna Island. Here's the causeway. There's the bridge. This is called Bob Island. It's where the guardhouse is. Then you go across this secondary causeway, and then you're on Dotah Island. All right, so we looked at three options here. We said, okay, what can we do and what we cannot do? Let's look at this. So the first option we looked at was raising the causeways, putting in a temporary bridge, and then doing a bridge complex later. Bottom line, we looked at this. It has a tremendously high cost, but when we had that conversation with the regulatory agencies, they basically told us they would not issue us a permit to do this. And the reason why is because they do not allow you to infill the marsh anymore to protect the ecosystems of the marsh. And I'll show you why that wouldn't work in just a few minutes. So that was one thing we looked at, and we said we can't do that. Also, it'd be very expensive. Let me give you an example. If they decided that they would give us a permit, we would have to go in, build a temporary trestle bridge, which would be a bridge beside the other bridge. We would have to fill in one side of the causeway while you drive on the other side. And when we fill it in, we have to let it surcharge or settle for 9 months. Then we pave that side, then we surcharge the other side, and you have to wait 9 more months. That's 18 months before we could even finish building the bridge. So long timeline and a traffic nightmare. But that's what that would look like. That's your current causeway, and kind of we looked at that from that perspective, and we just can't be done. So we looked at option 2. Option 2 is building a clear span bridge all the way from Palawanna Island here on Dotah Drive, spanning to the left-hand side of the current causeway bridge complex, going over the top of Bob Island and landing over by the sales center on the right-hand side of Dotah Island. Okay, that was a clear span bridge. Now, this gets us up to the proper elevations that we need. It gives us a direct route. It gives us easier permitting because they will permit this. It also gives us an opportunity to leave Bob Island as a green space. Now, one thing in this design is that there's no access to Bob Island because the bridge goes over the top of it and it's suspended. So we don't have a ramp to get down to it. So it's basically landlocked at that point. Now, also, this bridge is more of a straight linear bridge. I'm going to show you a different option in option 3. But it does have some traffic disruptions because of the crossover here and here that we have to make. All right. The guardhouse will be really located from Bob Island to this area right here. That is approximately where you go around the last right-hand turn before you enter the causeway. That's where that is. So you look over on the right, there's a big green area in there. That's where that would go. So we build a secondary road around the right, and we'd emulate what we have up on Bob Island right now. We affectionately on the team call this the drag strip because it's just a straight road after you go through the guardhouse. So therefore, it's we'd have to be careful with the speeds on this one. But that's what it would look like, and the cost of that is $15,141,500 to build that bridge. Okay, and we can talk about that a little bit later. All right, so this is what it looks like in a more blown up view. You can see now one of the things this does not give you is it doesn't give you that aesthetical view that you have now driving across the causeway on the right hand side, because you're going to be blocked more because you're on the left hand side versus the right hand side of the current complex. All right, let's look at option 3. Option 3, it's in the same location. The guardhouse is here. This goes on the right-hand side of the current bridge causeway. We land on Bob Island and build a road, and then we pick up a secondary bridge and we land it on the right-hand side near the guardhouse. This gives you that aesthetical view. So you'll be able to see more back up this way because the clubhouse is to the north here. So, and also this gives you a nice curve. It also gives us access to Bob Island because we build a road on Bob Island. We don't build an actual bridge on Bob Island. We build a road. It does have a little cost implications because there is more linear feet of bridge. This is much easier to build and it will cause no disruption during construction because we have to just do the tie-in over here and you'll be driving on this side and we do the tie-in here while you're driving. Okay. However, this one comes with a more hefty price tag of $16,148,000. Okay, and that's what it would look like from an aerial view from the overhead. Okay, real quickly, this is what your current system looks like today. Causeway Bridge, Bob Island Causeway. This is what it would look like. So you see, we bridge all the way across, land on Bob Island, and pick up bridge on the other side. This is why you can't. This is why you cannot receive a permit. This is the current causeway. This would be how much we have to fill in order to build that bridge. Okay. This is what your current bridge looks like today. Our design is to make it a little bit wider and also add a bike path walk lane to that bridge so you can walk or ride all the way across. We do have some people who ride their bikes off the island, so we've included that in the design. This is our timeline. We basically finished everything. We are ready to do our final schematic designs later this year. We're going to be working with BMA to put a proposal together to do that. You're going to vote on this the first of the year. I hope it passes. We'll seek permitting. Now, see, this is why it takes long. So look how long that permitting time is going to take us. Remember that alphabet soup I showed you earlier? Well, we got to go through all those folks. Then once they come back and give us the okay or no, you need to change this or change that, then we'll do our final design. We'll bid it in 25. We'll award the contract in January 26. We'll start building in March of 26 and finish in the fall of 27. That's how long it takes to build it. Okay. All right. Now, I have stressed with the architects, with BMA and the engineers with them, can we do it sooner? We can do it a little sooner. We might can get it finished in March or April of 27, about 6 months. I think we press the schedule. All righty. Let me answer a couple of key questions before we get to I'll turn it over to Bill Paddock, who's going to come up here in just a moment. Some people would ask this simple question. It's a great question. It's perfect. Why can't we just replace a bridge in its location and leave the causeway? It's lasted 35 years. They've replaced it. It could last 35 years. I'm not going to be here 35 years from now. Why would I care? Right? Well, guess what? Engineers, architects, and project managers, we follow what's something that's called the standard of care. We take an ethical oath that we will design something to the current code requirements to make sure, and also to make sure it is safe. We cannot design something that goes against those requirements. So if you wanted to do that, good luck in finding an engineer that would design it and put his or her stamp on those drawings to submit it to the county to get a permit. They would not do it. I actually asked BMA. I said, Mark, the guy who owns BMA, I said, would you design this and put your stamp on it and approve it? He said, Ted, no, I would not. I would not. But also Beaufort County Code requirements that the bridge has to be at 11 feet at approximate 100-year storm, and bridges today in the state of South Carolina have to be designed to last at least 65 years. That's the design requirement. Second question. Why are we spending so much money on this bridge when Paulawanna Road could be washed out? Good question. Fair question. Well, it's a big difference. Paulawanna is owned by the county and is maintained by South Carolina DOT. Now, in most coastal states, they have outside contractors that can be mobilized by the Department of Transportation to make repairs to such roads as Paulawanna. That is why Sanibel Island was opened in 15 days. They had a contractor on site the next day because they have contracts, standing contracts with folks to repair roadways to make sure people have access. So we wouldn't be so fortunate because we're a private entity and all those contractors would be tied up. So hence, that's why we don't need to worry about that. They'll take care of that, believe me. So we know it's necessary. We know it's not doing well. And it's got to be replaced. And we've given you two options and the cost associated with that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill Paddock. And Bill's going to talk a little bit about the water. Thank you. I'll lay it right there, Bill.
Good afternoon, folks. My topic is a little easier than what you just heard. What he talked about was necessary. This is aspirational. And the rest of what you hear about today is going to be aspirational. The committee that I worked with, I've been here 25 years on the island. I love this place. Glad we've done what we've done over the years to get where we are, but we got to keep looking about more things. Clay and Chris are both served on the DIOA board, have been an important part of this project. And the other three people have just been people who care about the beauty of this island and can find and help us make it more attractive for all of us. Mike Hieronymus helped us with some of our sketches. The Rimkus engineers helped us look at the marina building, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And Mike Murphy at Preservation Tree has helped us with looking at the trees and what can or should be done to care for the trees. For some of you that may know Michael, he's been working on this island for probably 30 years in helping us maintain our trees, and been a great asset to many of us. As Ted said, this was an interest that was expressed by all of you in the master plan report, the member survey, and Wood and Partners all have said we can do better at the Morgan River waterfront. When we started to look at this, we realized that we've got three different, very distinct, separate operations up here. And we thought we ought to try to pull them together. There are no walkways between these now. We think we needed to add walkways to make it a little more coordinated. The property, I think it's about 11 acres that we've got up here, runs along here, just behind the homes that are on Sparrow's Nest. And it runs on the other side. It runs behind a home that's up in this area, down in here, and then it follows the golf course back here. That's what we've got. That's the North End campus, as we call it. Because we have three separate operations and the potential need for more parking, we had to look at the whole process, the whole enchilada up here, what we've got. And that's the green space we want to preserve. It's there. It's been wonderful. We don't want to get into that if we don't have to. And that's an important part of it. You've also got the community center that takes up this space. You've got the boatyard that takes up that space. And you've got the roads that are currently there. That's what we have today, which means that the only part we've got left to really work with is this space back in here. There's not much else we can do since all of this other stuff is really taking over a lot of the other space. I would point out here that the gazebo is back in here. The Morgan River Grill building is over in this area right here. When we started to look at this, we said if the community center is going to expand, that's going to mean more parking. If the wet slips expand or the marina wet slips or dry stacks, I got them mixed up. The wet slips and the dry stack expands, that's going to require more parking. If you do anything to expand the waterfront building, that's going to be more parking. So we need to get to 165 spaces. This is the county rule in terms of how we're using the space. We've got to get to 165 parking spaces. That can be a combination of cars and golf carts and bicycles. But we've got to make provision in our plans to do all that to get any kind of approval. As I said, we want to do everything we can to preserve the trees and the green space, and we want to provide walks to get from one part of the area to the other. The existing is on the left. The marina building is here, the gazebo is here, the restrooms are here. The only walkway we have is down in this area right here. Everything else is kind of disconnected. Over here on the right, again, you got the same marina building. We've moved the gazebo, and I'll talk about that in a minute, a little back this way. You've got parking more along the circle here. You've got walkways going back and forth. This area right here is required because of the community center expansion. You got to put parking in here, which means you just have one roadway coming in here. This road will also be the way the boats come in to their boatyard. So we've got to make sure that road is big enough to do that. But it gets a more coordinated effort. It takes care of the parking needs that we have. Where's the waterfront? Anybody see any water there? We think there's opportunity for improvement. As everybody else has said before, we think these two facilities should come down. Move the playground to someplace else on the island. The Common Grounds Committee has been given that challenge to see what everybody wants to do and where that should go. And as I said a minute ago, we think the gazebo ought to be moved back. This happens to be an area you could no longer build in today because of the setback requirements in the county. So we could not build it where it is today. What could a Morgan River landing look like? Well, we got the walkways, you've got a fire pit, you put picnic tables, put swings. It can be much more attractive. Trim the trees. When we're talking to Michael Murphy, there's some trimming we need to do out there because the trees are not healthy, and we can do something to make sure the health of the trees is good long term. And we can also do some trimming for a better view, which is important, I think, for all of us. Again, the swing, this is what we think the gazebo could look like. We like the higher walls, more screen. We like the open ceiling. We think this back wall back here should be a solid back wall against the homes on Sparrow Nest. Maybe put a fireplace, some large screen TV, go up there, a group of your friends to watch a football game or a tennis match. A much easier, more comfortable gathering place. We want to expand it from the 1,500 square feet we have today to about 2,400 square feet. And as I said, move it back so we can take care of the setback rules in the county. In this picture here, I think one of the things we want to add is an outdoor grill right here. You can see it here, but we think that's an important addition to add to the gazebo. We're not trying to put a kitchen in here. We're not trying to put a bar in here. This is, again, very similar to the space we have today, but the ability to have an outdoor grill might be a good idea. The Morgan River Landing building. This building was built in 1990 by Alcoa. When we sold the marina, the building was sold to a third party in 1997. It was not properly maintained for a good many years. And when we did our due diligence, when we bought the marina back in 2019, we knew it was not in great shape. So we had to get it fixed back up to make it functional and make it usable for the services. We asked the Remkes Group to do an evaluation of the building. What's it like? Can it survive? Could we add a second story? What's the status of the building? And they said, yes, you could add a second story, but it's not smart. It's not cost effective. What you really ought to do long-term is to tear it down and build something new. That's the right long-term answer. It's okay now. We can keep it going for a couple of years, but clearly the intent at some point, it needs to come down and to be put back up. And we've made provision in our plan to put in a 3,000 square foot footprint with a possible second story. So anything we're doing in the parking of the roads is not going to prohibit us from doing that. That'll all be tied in together. What is this going to cost us? Well, the new entrance, as I talked about, changing the roads because of the additional parking, adding the walkways, the paths, removing the playground and gazebo, putting a new gazebo in, we're looking at about $2 million. About half of that is roadways and parking. So depending upon what other people do will depend upon what this real cost could be. If we just did the gazebo and the waterfront, we're looking at closer to $500,000. So where are we? We can't do anything until we know what else is going to be done. If the community center has the expansion, if that's approved, if the waterfront area, the boating area is expanded, that'll influence what we do with the roads and parking. So once we know that, then we can put together a plan to develop what's necessary. We're ready to get going. We think we ought to get going quickly, and look forward to hearing your comments. Now, Scott Johnson's going to talk to us. Oh, wait a minute, I'm one summary. Sorry about that, guys. We knew we wanted to do this. We've got a plan to do it. We've got a plan to do it relatively inexpensively in the big picture here, and we're ready to go. Now, Scott, sorry about that.
I didn't have to speak for so. Well, I'm going to start the presentation talking about our new ferry and ferry dock for the marina, and if we don't do one of the bridge options. Just kidding, I suppose. All right, so my name's Scott Johnson. I chair the Wet Slip Dry Stack Advisory Committee. And on the committee, we had a great team of people. Martha Keat, who's here today, our DIOA board member, Al Deedle, Andy Shepard, Max Stone, and Rick Brown. All are very experienced boaters. They're very familiar with the operation at our marina, the functionality of it, what's working, what's not. And they also have a lot of experience on many other facilities, marinas and marine facilities up and down the East Coast. We also partnered with BMA. BMA is a marina engineering and design firm. They also worked on the bridge. Got a lot of experience around up and down the East Coast building marinas, and they've even done several marinas for private communities like us. Our objective, as our very innovative name would say, Wet Slip Dry Stack Advisory Group. We looked at some wet slips, we looked at dry stack, but we also looked at everything else related to boating. We looked at all the docks, we looked at how things are handled, we looked at the boatyard, looked at the fuel systems and what's working, what isn't, what needs improvement, how it's going. So I think the last 5 or 6 years, there's been a lot of new faces coming here. So I think it's worth taking a minute just to look at where we started with the marina and then where we are today and then where we're heading. This is a picture of the marina around 2013, 2014. We didn't own it then. It was probably about a 90 slip marina, plus or minus. You can see here is probably around 60 boats. That was pretty consistent. It was very busy, a lot of activity down there. We also had a dry stack. Can't quite see it here, but back then we probably had 30 or 40 boats in the dry stack. Then we had a visit from Hurricane Matthew in 2016. As you can see, pretty much all the concrete docks that were out here got destroyed. We were left with a bunch of concrete pilings out there in the water. We had a few sunk boats in here. We had a couple docks that survived right here and here, wooden docks. They're still there today. They're in rough shape, but we're still using them. We had this area, the pier head was damaged. There was a lot of mess up in the landscaping and stuff, so it really wasn't accessible to our members to use the pier head. And at the time, the owner of the facility said, we're not going to rebuild. And he pretty much abandoned the place. In 2019, the DIOA members decided to buy the place as is, and it was one of the best decisions I think DIOA's made. So where are we today? Whoop. Current docks. So just to understand the goal at DIOA when they purchased it was really to get something functional as quickly and inexpensively as possible, which they did. They started by cleaning out all those concrete pilings that were out in the river, cleaned up a few sunk boats, built this 400-foot wooden dock with power and water and fire protection. At least it gave some space for our boaters and potentially a little space for some visiting boaters. Put a little bit of a wave attenuator up here just to help protect a little bit from the east. We put a fuel pump system back in here. Cleaned up the pier head, the landscaping, and the public areas, so everybody on the island now has access out here to see the views and the sunset. We refurbished, rebuilt some of the dry stack, so now have over 100 boats out in our dry stack. We also cleared out some space down here for more storage of larger boats, and we have somewhere around 30 boats out there now. So basically, the marina's back in business. It's very vibrant, very busy. It's a multi-million-dollar asset that you all own. And I think it's one of the things over the last couple of years, it's actually paid for itself. It's covering its own costs, including debt service. But with all that success, it's now exceeded its current capabilities, and the age is starting to take its toll down there. So what did our committee find when we looked at this? So currently, about 20% of our members on the island own boats. That's about 200 some odd boats. And we got more coming. We can continuously get feedback for people that are out looking at boats or on a waiting list to get one or in the middle of shopping. So it's a very active time. But our wet slips and our dry stacks are full. You can see here, Our dry stack, like I said, we have over 100 boats. We've even got boats up on the grass now. Not very efficient. If you look at our wet slips, have been pretty full down here. No room. Our dry, this is our bullpen where the boats come from dry stack to go in the water. You can see we have over 100 boats here. We've got room for about 8 in here. And that's led to some congestions, led to some accidents, potential injuries, potential liabilities. Our fuel system is right here. As you can see, it's pretty crowded in there. So people coming in and out for fuel, it's busy. We can't really even get bigger boats in here to get fuel. And just as a tidbit, we've sold over 33,000 gallons of fuel just this year. So that's quite a bit of traffic coming and going. We don't really have a lot of room for visitors. There's a lot of people traveling up and down the Intercoastal Waterway with boats. They go somewhere every night. We like those people to come here and visit because they get to see Dotto for the first time and see what a special place it is. We've turned a lot of them away. It'd be nice to have an opportunity to bring in some more visitors. Our docks are poorly protected. Our bullpen over here is pretty exposed here. When the wind's blowing out of the east, it gets really rough, and we've had some boats get damaged in here. And then on our wet slips, you can see it's fully exposed to the west, and we've had several boats get significant damage in there. And I don't think it's right to have our customers getting, exposing their boats to damage. We have, as I mentioned, we've had several docks here that survived. They've been here for like 35 years. They've been through storms and hurricanes, and they need to be replaced no matter what we do. They're getting in bad shape. Also, our docks, we haven't, when we put this back together, it was to get it back together, get it functional. We do not have handicap accessible docks. And I think as a DIOA facility, we would expect to have access for everybody. And I think everybody that's been down to the marina can say that the appearance and quality is not what we expect on our DIOA and DIC assets that you all own. We would expect something more. So when our committee looked at this, what were the solutions? So we looked around here. We worked with our marina staff. We interviewed the customers here. We went to see some other marinas around the area to see what other places are doing. And basically, we came down to two major issues: expanding the dry stack storage and refurbishing and expanding our floating docks. So the dry stack, as I mentioned, we have over 100 boats. We have boats scattered around the yard. So we looked at a solution of basically putting in a 2-tiered rack here in the middle of the boatyard. So 2 racks here, 2-story racks. That looked like. We partnered with a company called Roof and Rack. They specialize on boat storage systems. Relatively simple system. We're talking about just a steel structure, 1-story high, basically. So you put a rack of boats on top, and it opens up rooms for about 28 more boats. Relatively simple solution. And that's, I think, basically what we look at here is this is a minimum investment with a maximum return. On our floating docks, we worked with BMA, as I mentioned, experienced engineers and designers. And we worked with them to develop a long-term master plan. Here's our master plan, just to orient everybody. So here's the existing pier head where we go down and watch the sunset. Here's that existing 400-foot wooden dock. So what BMA is proposing was ultimately be about 80 spaces for boats. But one of our key facets was being able to phase this in. So what we have is phase 1 here. Then we have phase 2, which adds about 20 more spots, and then phase 3. So we looked at this. We're trying to be as conservative and cost effective as possible. A committee looked at saying we recommend going just with phase 1 at this time. Again, trying to keep a minimum investment with a maximum return. Phase 1. Basically, we're adding space here. All total, we're adding about 22 spaces, about double what we have now. We're looking to add some wave attenuation here, heavier duty, bigger, stronger docks here and here, so that our boats are more protected and less likely to get damaged. We were adding, moving the fuel system out to here, where it's much more accessible. Big boats can get in there. And again, with more, having some visitor spaces out here, we'd be selling more fuel. We would anticipate having 5 or 6 of these spaces kind of dedicated for visitors, both, overnight big boats, sometimes maybe a week or two, or even just some of the small boats for the restaurant during the weekend. On the dry stack side, we were looking to expand the bullpen here, which right now it ends here, basically expand it like this. So we basically double the size, add room for about 12 more boats, double the size for our dry stack customers, and that alleviate the crowding, again, reducing the risk of accidents and injuries and potential liabilities we've had going on in there now with the crowd. We're looking to add an accessible ramp here so everybody can access our docks. We're looking to put a little bit of a wave attenuator here, which protects the bullpens, again, trying to prevent damage to our boats in there, and also benefits the ability to haul larger boats out safely and more efficiently here by pulling them in and pulling them out with the travel lift. We replace the docks that are damaged, get replaced. That existing fuel dock, which is in bad shape, that existing connector dock, which was really a temporary dock put in by right after Hurricane Matthew. And then this dock here, the bullpen dock, which is also 35 years old and degraded. And our little fishing dock here, which is completely falling apart. What does something like this look like? This is a Palmetto Bay Marina down in Hilton Head. They were recently rebuilt or refurbished. You can see they have the long parallel docks like we have. They use a heavy-duty aluminum dock system with composite docking. It's very clean, very neat, very strong, very attractive looking. And you can see here, these guys, they're pretty full down there as well. So what does all this cost? As I said, we worked with BMA. They did a lot of detailed cost estimates, very detailed. And looking at our phase 1, which again, we recommend as being the most cost-effective plan, about $2.7 million. You look at the other additional phases, phase 2, phase 3 for additional about 20 slips each is about 1.5 million. But we're focused on phase 1 around $2.7 million. Just for talking purposes, is something called the BIG grant, Boating Infrastructure Grant. That is a federal grant, something we could be eligible for. If you dedicate some space to visiting boats, you're eligible for the grant. We don't know if we'll apply for that, and certainly there's no guarantee you would ever get it. So we have not built that into any of the numbers going forward or Laurie's financial plans. But it's just something that could be a benefit in the future if we were to pursue that. Now, one of the things with the marina, which is a little bit different, we certainly have the cost of capital to expand the marina. But when you expand, you also get additional revenue. And we did some rough calculations and came up with, we might get about $280,000 of additional revenue per year by the expansion. Why does that matter? Well, just for illustration, if we were to borrow that $2.7 million for 15 years at 7%, that's somewhere around $290,000. Even if you round up to $3 million, we're somewhere around $330,000 a year principal and interest. So we're offsetting a majority of the cost to build out the marina. Now, that's not to say there aren't other costs that could be increased because of the expansion, but certainly the marina contributes a lot to, offsetting those costs. And then after that gets paid off, then it's making pretty good money. Finance will cover that in more detail. Some of the questions might come up. Well, if we build it, will they come? So our dry stack, we already have about 7 to 10 boats kind of in the queue, waiting for spaces, getting ready, kind of lining them up. We frequently hear people in the middle of looking for boats, so there's more boats coming. We have boats scattered around the yard now that really need to be organized up in the dry stack the way they're supposed to be, and then that frees up more space in the yard for other uses. On our floating docks, we've got just in the last week or so, we had like three to five boats looking for long-term storage on the dock. We have a member survey that the DIYC did last year, and about 14 of the members said they're actually considering new, bigger boats if we had place for them. And the other thing the marina uses is DOCWA. So DOCWA is a national reservation system. If you want to dock for the night, if you want to dock for the year, you go on there, you can look around, you can do inquiries, and our marina uses that and tracks the inquiries. And basically over the last year and a half on long-term dockage in the water, they've turned away approximately 10 boats per year, or having 10 boats in there for a year. And then they've turned away about an average of a boat a day for visiting boaters. So in summary, just saying, if we did build this, we feel pretty confident we'll be able to keep it pretty full. What's the other key question? How does the marina benefit non-boaters? Well, I think if you look at all our comparable communities around, they all have golf, they all have tennis, they all have dining facilities. Probably all of them have pickleball now. But none of them have a marina facility like ours, where we have the haul out capacity, we have wet slips, we have dry stack. There's nobody around here that has that. It's unique. And when I talk to the real estate professionals on island, they say the majority of their buyers, up to 75% of the buyers they bring into the island, say the marina is a critical reason why they're looking here. The marina brings in visitors. And, the boaters come in, they see Data, they didn't know it was here, and they find it by the water. I'm one of those. I came here by boat a while ago now, 2010, and 5 years later, and I had no idea Data existed. 5 years later, I bought a house. So it brings in visitors, it brings in potential buyers, and all that adds value to our real estate. And it's a multi-million-dollar asset that you all own that adds value to the whole island. And we all have access now to the water. That's the best access to the water we have is down there whenever you want to use it. So the summary, we have a unique facility. It benefits all our members, but it's poorly protected. It's causing damage to our boats. It's overcrowded. We've had accidents and potential liabilities. It's full. There's no more room for member boats. And those buyers that are coming to the island looking for a marina, it's like, we might get a space, but maybe not. We have docks that are failing and degraded, and they definitely need to be repaired no matter what we do, or replaced. And we know it doesn't look like all our other DIOA and DIC facilities that you own. So the plan we put together addresses all of that, fixes all those issues, and it's ready to go. We could start permitting tomorrow. We've already had discussions with the state, OCRM, and the Army Corps of Engineers. They don't see any problems with the permitting, and construction could start as early as a year from now. So I think all our DIOA and DIC assets, they need maintenance, they need improvements, and I think we think it's the marina's past due. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Bill Weber.
Okay, we're about halfway through. We don't have time for you to take a potty break, but if you are getting a little stale in the seat, if you need to stand up or stretch a little bit, you're free to do that. That won't be a problem. So don't hesitate if you feel the need. Up until this point, the projects, the bridge, the Morgan River waterfront, and the wet and dry slips, those are all DIOA assets, and whatever gets voted on in February of next year, the bridge for sure, and potentially something else, those would be voted on by all the residents on the island, property owners, basically. The next couple of things that we're going to take a look at are DIC issues and would be dealt and voted on by the DIC members. I'm Bill Weber and have chaired this committee really along with Jack Sovereign. You heard his experiences and a lot of the work that he's done along the way on this. Kevin Ennis, the manager here, has been a part of this. And then Chris Asoff, Meredith Nelson, and Phil Mitnick have been a part too. Phil and Jack really have been working on this since 2021. They've been on a project, and I'll share that in a minute, that have been working through this. Phil is an architect by education, so he brings some assets to us that way. Chris and Meredith are both very experienced in the fitness world. They've owned or operated fitness facilities themselves in the past. Meredith is currently an instructor here too. So there's a lot of experience along the way here. Our professional help has come from KRA Architecture, an architectural firm over in Bluffton. Michael Crononus is the individual we've been working with there. So the community center expansion has a long history. You can go back to long-range planning minutes, committee minutes, probably back to 2010 or even earlier, where folks have been questioning, can we expand the community center? What can we do? Are there ways to do that? And that's gone on off and on over the years. But in 2020, the long-range planning committee did a white paper, did a study and finished that up by writing a white paper on what the community center ought to be or could be going forward. What are the things that we don't have room for? What are the things we need to have in the facility? Where could we do these things? They looked at, can we expand this building? Do we need to add additional buildings? Can we look at any other buildings on the island, the sales center, space down in the administration area, all of those sorts of things? And they wrote that white paper at the end of 2020. The committee that Jack Sovereign led, and there were a dozen people on that, Phil Mitnick, Jim Klein is here. He was part of those sorts of things. They worked in 2021 to develop a design working with KRA Architecture. And that design we shared in this room in 11 focus group meetings last May in the early part of 2020. I got back on the board at that point in time and got involved at that point too. And so we did those meetings, and we got a lot of feedback, obviously, when you do 11 meetings and have over 200 attend. I probably have about 13 pages of single space feedback. We got ideas folks liked and didn't like, and what else they suggested. But this was basically the design proposed at that point in time. This was the existing community center. There was proposal for a new gym space on the back of that, and a separate building down here in 3 lots that are owned by the DIC, part of that green space that Bill Paddock mentioned that it turns out we don't really want to be building into. I'll go through just real quickly here. This is the existing building, and in the new plan sort of is the same. I'll describe it in a little more detail. This was the fitness center on the back, a bit of a funky shaped building with a patio looking out towards Morgan River 15 Green. The the new building was this design basically, and I'll spend some more time and talk about these buildings. But one of the things we've heard was this porch, this loading dock, this service bar and kitchen here, 3 conference rooms, because it's separate space. There's some office spaces here, some storage and those sorts of things, was just bigger than we needed. The sort of feedback we got when we left the focus group was really very positive. We asked whether the community centers expanded the content and scope of those 2 buildings. Does that make sense to me? And the feedback we got last spring was really strong. 83% of the focus group members said those are good ideas. And we ask another question, is an up-to-date community center sufficient size and offerings important to current residents and future residents? And even a stronger result there at nearly 90% people agreeing with that statement. We did a bunch of feedback. I told you we had lots and lots of pages of stuff, but some of the key ones were that the building that we were proposing down there didn't have a lot of low country architectural influences, and we would like to see more of that. They didn't want us to be building in the trees if we could avoid doing that. The separate buildings, and we recognize that, would cost more and staffing could be an issue there. And sort of the corollary to that is it was bigger than it needed to be. And at that point in time, we didn't have these meetings scheduled, but we were hearing that folks wanted to hear what else was going on in the community. Folks, the bridge was clearly something that was going to be coming up. So just again, reviewing real quickly what master plan was, is this is what we had originally proposed. Wooden Partners suggested that we take this building and pull it up on the back of here. So they were suggesting this. They actually extended the parking back into those trees that we didn't want to take down in here. And as Ted mentioned earlier, fitness, meeting space, and green space were 3 of the top 5 or 6 things here that the community indicated they were interested in last fall. So this is the current building. I share this. I'll go a little bit more detail in the next couple slides. but this is just to show you where that space, where it fits on the property. So these sort of dotted parking spaces back here are our existing parking lots. So the building would fall largely onto that area. We have to take out a few trees, but we also save trees on the exterior side of this. This is the end of the existing parking lot, so we don't go into this treed area down here. There is this expanded parking out front that's consistent with what Bill talked about. So there's a single Marina Drive in and out here with turning radiuses that get big boats down to the Marina Dry area here and into the circle around Morgan River Landing. So we do meet the needs for the county for parking and those sorts of things with this design. So this would be the current building and with its redesign. There's no physical changes in the pool area. The locker rooms, which we've heard a lot of feedback, need to be bigger, need to be renewed. They're tired and need it. So this is a larger locker room space for both men and for women. We would take the current gym out of this space and make it a group fitness class space. This group fitness current space gets a little bit smaller because we add some storage. So we could offer additional things down here. We could be doing yoga and Tai Chi at the same time. We could down the road add some spin bikes in here and offer those sorts of things. So that's what this space is for, group fitness down here. This would be the lobby reception room, and this would be, basically lunch space for the staff down here in this building. The current room that we're in now, this becomes PT space. One of the key things that we need additional PT capability down here. Members currently sometimes can't get a PT appointment for as long as 2 or 3 weeks when they need that now. Sometimes some folks even have to go downtown in order to do their PT. So we're offering more space here for that. And the current arts room back here, we would add a couple of rooms in, and that would become the services area for massages, reflexology, any other sorts of things that we would potentially offer. So folks out of the locker room certainly could still go to the pool, go to fitness. And then when we split this, you just see one half of a doorway here. So I'm going to speak now about the addition space. So this is the other half of the doorway here. So you'll be coming out of the locker room here and into the new gymnasium space here. We've heard over the years a lot of comments. It's awful crowded in there. There's some machine equipment that we need to have that we don't have, and there are no free weights in there. So this new design space here would have a mirrored back wall here, and this area down in this area would be free weights and benches and things to work with that. Over here on this side is where you would put all the strength equipment, the machines that we have today with a couple of additions. All the aerobic equipment would go along this side with views. This is a windowed wall you'll see in a minute that looks out onto the golf course area there. And then this space down in here is open for stretching and those sorts of things, which we really have no room for today. People that try and do that, they get stepped on when folks step off of aerobic equipment down there now and those sorts of things. So that's what we're proposing. I'm going to show you here exterior renderings of this space from here and here and here. And the key thing that I forgot about this is this space here is now the key meeting spaces for the community. This space that we're in now is about 1,200 square feet. What we're proposing here in these 3 rooms, sort of 3, is 3 600 square foot spaces. So half again as big as this room. These are dividing walls which can be pulled out. So you could do, bridge here and mahjong there and have a meeting down there all at the same time, which we can't do today because our spaces are not dividable or cannot be divided. It's probably better English. But anyway, so that's what that space is. The current art space over behind us is about 700 square feet. So what's proposed here is 2 600 square foot rooms, again, with the divider. It can be all the full size that would be available for any multi-purpose use, but it also would have extra plugs and outlets and sinks and those sorts of things for the arts. There's some space for ceramics here, sort of like we have today with a little bit extra space. On this wall is some storage for the chairs and things that fit into that that you're sitting on today that go into these spaces. There is a warming kitchen here provided, no food preparation, but refrigerators, warming cabinets, ice machine, and those sorts of things, something to keep the white wine cool when we're doing art things in the building down here. There's a small conference room here, 2 restrooms, and then this is a storage room that lets the arts store, you know, the quilters, the painters, the cards people, all that stuff could have their storage space here. Double doors basically across the hall that can all be pulled quickly into this space. The other key feature is this hallway is a 10-foot wide, we're calling it an exhibit hallway. This room outside, the hallway outside here is only 5 feet wide. So when you're trying to look at the art that's in there, your nose is essentially up against it. This would give you the ability to look at that the way we ought to. So now I'm going to show you those external renderings so you see what this could look like. So this is a proposed look at what that new expansion is. This is the gym space back here. Here's the ramp. You come out across the front here and then into this new space down here. On the front side here with the lower roof is that storage space, the warming kitchen, the restrooms, those sorts of things. So that's across here. Then the roof, I'll show you the end profile, which gives you a better look here. It goes into the back where all the multi-purpose spaces are. These are clear story windows that bring light into that hallway. So this is what it could look like from the end. We have that space up front. The multi-purpose rooms are along the back. This exposed truss is then carried into the interior rooms, which I'll show you. And this is that 10-foot wide hallway with light coming in from the top for whatever. Along the back, this is the existing pool. So this is sort of what's being built here. These are the fitness windows. These are the multi-purpose windows here. These trees do exist and could be saved out there. There's actually a mound here that sort of hides the pool area, but it does provide separation from and is far enough away from the golf course and whatever that we're not going to be slicing balls into those windows. This is the front of the existing building proposed. You can see we've proposed changing the asphalt roof, which is getting to be to the point it's going to need to be repaired or replaced anyway at some point in the near future. But these 2 dormers exist today. This would be a new dormer that we'd add just to break up this large expanse of roof down here. And actually, these are fakies. They don't bring light in anything. They're just up there as architectural details. We would actually have this one work so you brought light into this space down here, which would become the PT space. We've added an entrance space here. The door's the same. Nothing's changed there, but it just makes it consistent with the other building. And on the end of this building, we would add an exterior truss again to tie it into the other buildings. So this is sort of what you would see from the end, looking at the current building and the entrance to the new building. 3 more slides just to show you the inside. This is the architect's idea of that exhibit hallway. These are just standard things, but we would use some sort of a hanging system like we have in here where the arts folks and the quilters could hang their fine work in here. You can see part of those exposed trusses here and that up space where the light would come in and down in the space. We wouldn't be looking to get new tables and chairs. This was the architect's idea of that. We would probably stay with the sort of thing we have. But to give you an idea, these are the 3 rooms. These are the potential dividers. We would have exposed trusses up at the top, and those rooms would all have, windows that could look out to the golf course area. Here is the gym. Very good rendering, almost too good because the room actually ends right here. That's that mirrored wall. So it looks like it's twice as big. Again, exposed trusses. Back here is that weight stuff, the machines here, the aerobic equipment, and stretching space down in here. So we've actually been at this, or our group was at it since 2021. So the other teams have really just started through calendar year 2023. We've had a little bit of a head start. So these plans are actually out getting design development, or some folks call it 60% design. that we will this coming month in October be able to take to a couple of local construction firms that could do a project of this size and get an actual price for this. This 9.8, which we're using today, and the numbers that you'll see going forward, is basically a per square foot estimate that we've done at this point in time. We've actually had one set of feedback that brings it in lower than that, but until we actually take it to a bid, we don't know that. But the key is that probably this third box here. We believe this is what we should build. DOT's got to decide when. If all we needed was more exercise space, we could do something different than this. If all we needed was more PT space, we could do something different than this. If all we needed was more meeting spaces, we could do something different than this. But the reality is that all of those needs exist in the community. We don't all use all of them, but the community uses all of that stuff on a daily basis. And so that's why a design like what we've shared here is what we're proposing. So we believe that this would meet the needs of a built-out DATA, that it utilizes this existing facility to the best way that it can. We've minimized, cut nearly 30% out of that expansion from what was proposed a year ago. And we've delivered a design that we think we would all be proud of if that's what in fact was built. So that's what we've got for the community center. And I'll turn it over to Barb Fisher, who's going to talk about dining.
Good afternoon. Now I get to talk about two of my favorite things, food and cocktails. I am Barbara Fisher, and I am chair of the dining ad hoc. We actually started working late last year, right after the master plan survey came out, and dining options was identified as a top priority. We thought, can we find some low-hanging fruit? Can we make some changes quickly and inexpensively? Can we get going and try to satisfy what our members are telling us they want? Our team includes Sonia Fales and Katie Hopper, Nancy Payne, former past president of DIC, and two members I want to particularly point out to you are Andrew Chavone and Dan Sullivan, both who have extensive professional experience in restaurants, dining. Andrew was GM for Radisson and Marriott, in charge of events. Dan ran the Philadelphia Civic Center, and convention centers are basically huge banquet halls. He also owned his own private steakhouse. And then Ted Barber did not tell you this, but he has about $1 billion in commercial construction experience. He is now working with Beaver County on their school construction project. And so when we would say, wow, wouldn't this be beautiful to do? Ted would say, but it's going to be very expensive. We said, well, let's just do it this way instead then. So it's been invaluable to have him on our group. And again, we came in a very close second in the priorities, right under the very sexy new Marina Landing. We were 2/100ths of a point behind. We started out, like I said, last year, we talked with our staff. We did a couple of field trips to try to identify key changes in our community and what our challenges were going to be. The number one thing is that we're serving more members at the club and the pub. DATA has grown 500 members in 5 years. We've had 500 new members. So our pub was built to serve a community of 500 homes. We have 976 homes today. As a result, we have long wait times on popular nights. I've waited an hour and a half for a table. When most people would get in within 20 minutes, 30 minutes on a popular night, but that's not unusual in a restaurant. It's not typical at a club, and it's really not acceptable at a club. You expect to be able to go in, sit down, get your drink, get a table. There's been a market shift toward fast casual eating. Today, people want to go in, get food that's lighter, healthier, less expensive, quicker. But we've also seen a huge demand on this island for fine dining. If you've been at any of our fine dining nights, they've been fabulous. We have tremendous response to those. So we're trying to be many things to many members. Problem we have is this. Currently, we have a 40-year-old kitchen, and it is inadequate to run 2 different menus out of the same kitchen. So when we try to do fine dining and we try to do a pub menu, it's very challenging for our staff. I think it's also pretty stressful to work in that kitchen. We have a big enough footprint, it's just not laid out right, and it's antiquated. The way I kind of compare it to is that if I had a 40-year-old kitchen, I have a dinner party for 8 people coming over, and I'm preparing a full menu. Appetizer, soup, salad, main course, dessert. at the same time, I'm preparing completely different menu for my neighbor next door so she can do her dinner party. And I'm doing it in the same kitchen at the same time. That's our challenge. We have a pub decor that's kind of tired and uninspired. And again, our kitchen is 40 years old. So we started out with what I call in Star Trek lingo, big Trekkie, our prime directive, which is that we knew that any changes that we were going to make in our dining facilities had to be done in a quality manner so that we can maintain and enhance our property values and our status as a premier community. However, we thought we have to take every effort to repurpose current spaces and devise some creative options to reutilize spaces that don't get a lot of action today, that are kind of sitting empty, just so that we could keep our costs down, because DAWTA has a lot of important needs and a lot of wants, and we all only have one wallet. So here's what we thought, let's do a 2-phase plan. Phase 1, we could move quickly and at a lower cost to alleviate our pub crowding, and we could give our members a completely distinct restaurant that takes advantage of DAWTA's stunning water views. Phase 2 is coming a few years down the road. It would address our aging infrastructure in our kitchen and our clubhouse, and it would offer a third dining option, a sports bar and a screen patio in the now underutilized Tides Edge Grill. And let me give you a little bit of taste of what we're talking about. Currently, what we have at Cotton Dyke Deli is a prep area. There's no kitchen there. Everything that's cooked, bacon, whatever it has to be cooked, is cooked in our pub kitchen and carted over there. It's why the deli has to be closed on Monday, because we'd have to open our clubhouse kitchen. And that means bringing in the dishwasher, bringing in cleaners, bringing in the chefs. It's expensive to do. If we figured if we actually have a restaurant here, if we have a little restaurant here at the pool and we actually have a kitchen, an actual kitchen, that would give us the ability to stay open on Monday. It also gives us the ability to do catering events at the pool, like we have 4th of July or parties at the pool, more fun at the pool. And most importantly, it gives us a second full kitchen at DAWTA, because when we talked about our 40-year-old kitchen, that's going to have to be fixed. We're going to have to shut it down, start tearing out walls, tearing out plumbing, tearing out electricity. We actually have maintained that kitchen over the years. We've done renovations partially. We've done repairs. We haven't been irresponsible with it, but it needs to be fully gutted and updated. When you start tearing out walls from an old structure, you all know you're going to find things that aren't up to code, and you're going to find surprises. When we traced some electrical lines and found that when we added some equipment for the kitchen, it actually was tied into the golf pro shop. So we're going to have to gut that. It's going to take 9 months to a year. If we have to close that kitchen for the better part of a year, we need another full kitchen at DAWTA to serve our members. If we have to close it because of an emergency, we need another full kitchen. So this is what we thought we'd do. Let's expand the Cotton Dyke Deli and create a fast, casual lunch dinner restaurant with screened roof seating and a cabana bar overlooking the outdoor pool in Jenkins Creek. We take this prep area and we create a little marketplace, kind of like the Outpost, if you remember what that was like. And right beside it, we would build, and I'll get to this on the drawings, an actual full kitchen. And then this area here becomes a covered, screened little dining area with a cabana bar. To give you a better idea, this is Palmetto Bluff. This is not the size of what we're building. This is far grander because we just don't have a big footprint. But you'd have a little market area. You'd have a counter where you could walk in and get some hot food. You'd have some glass front cases here, kind of like at a Parker's, where you could get some drinks, probably in cans and plastic bottles, because we are a pool. And you get some grab-and-go sandwiches and some salads. You want fresh hot food, you go there and order it. I see this as being a coffee bar in the future. I would love to be able to do a simple breakfast, hot breakfast sandwiches. We already have bacon, we already have eggs. How long does it take to stick it on a croissant or English muffin and grab a hot breakfast sandwich? Get your coffee. When we visited the other communities, both general managers, we were at the Landings and we were at Kalawasi. They have these very simple marketplace structures, put a roof screening here, again, a cabana bar that would overlook the pool. When we asked them, what was the biggest surprise when you built this? They all told us the same thing. We are astonished that even in the coldest weather, in the winter when it's raining, people are here and it's packed. So we would have to get, as they did, some sort of weatherproofing system that rolls down like isinglass shades, so that when people want to sit and look out at the water, they want to have a cup of coffee in the morning, see the Jenkins Creeks. And Kalawasi's setup is almost identical to ours. They have a river and they have a pool, and that's their view. Ours is the creek and the pool. People love it. It's very popular. We are blessed too with the pool because this area would seat about 50 people with our bar. And we'd have extra seating with the pool pavilion and pool seating. So I don't ever see this as getting too crowded. The important thing about the 50 seats here is that currently our clubhouse seats about 96 people. So that gives us 50% more seating at a pretty low cost. Like I said, roof screening. That might be enough to take away some of our serious crowding in the pub, meaning all we have to do is a simple refresh and not spend a whole lot of money over there. So we want to do this first so that A, we have a kitchen to serve our members when we have to shut down the main kitchen for renovation. And B, we can gauge how much crowding that's taking out of our main pub so that we don't have to do something too exotic there. We would have, go back a little bit. You can't see it too well in these drawings or in this, the architect sent us this, but back and through here is an actual full-size kitchen. We would get an actual pizza oven, the 3-story ones that have, I call them the garage doors that open up so you could do takeout pizza or eat pizza there. We'd have some flat top grills so we could do hamburgers. We'd have some fryers so we can do chicken nuggets and French fries for the kids or the big kids. And we would mostly focus though on a Mediterranean kind of Tuscan menu, lighter, healthier fare that people tend to want to have. And here's the architectural drawing so you can get a little bit of an idea. This is a little bit bigger than the scale we're going to be able to have. He drew it, I think, a little too large. We only have about 2 or 3 cases. We just don't have the room, but a coffee bar, place to order. There'd still be an area where you could pick up to-go orders on the turn through the Data app. You'd have a full kitchen. You'd get delivery. This is actually the sidewalk facing the clubhouse. This is the tennis court. We'd be able to bump out a little bit. There's some parking for a couple of golf carts here. We could bump out a little bit there. But mostly what we would be doing to get the space, and there's the kitchen, is that currently, if you look at the Cotton Dyke Deli, as you go up to order and you're on the pool side, you'll see some swinging doors. That's just all wasted space. It's empty. So we could steal that space to use it for the market. And we could bump out a little bit just kind of on the perimeter. So you could come in from the tennis court area into here, or from the where it faces the clubhouse, go into the marketplace, and then you walk right into this little covered screened area with the bar. One thing that's important about this to recognize is that it's mostly self-serve. It's not going to have high staffing costs. And that's important for our budget forevermore, really. So you could get up, there's currently these steps and handicap ramps. They already exist. We're going to leave them there. There's a bar here. People like to sit and have a drink by the pool. Pretty simple structure, nothing, no walls. Second thing we're going to do is, the good news is we already have money to do it and we're already working on it. It's not an assessment. We took a look at this patio and that was one of the first things that we started to do and said, it's not very attractive. We'd like to have a place where people could sit and have cocktails, wait for their table, come in after bocce or pickleball or tennis or golf. And so House and Social Committee is already starting to work on looking at how we redecorate this. This is just a couple of ideas of how much nicer it could look. And like I said, money is already in the budget to do this. So we're hoping to get moving on this very quickly. Some considerations. Phase 1 offers a really quick, cost-effective solution for additional dining and a distinct menu choice. It leverages the Cotton Dyke Deli's popularity. Fun fact, 30% of all lunches today are already served at the Cotton Dyke Deli. It would be open for dinner, and we'd like to keep it open on Mondays as well. And then we hope to expand it to breakfast at some point. The kitchen at the deli would become a backup if we have to close our pub kitchen for planned renovations or for an emergency. And the total projected cost, including a 20% contingency, is $2.5 million. Then this is our glimpse ahead, down the road. We would repurpose the underutilized Tide's Edge Grill as a casual tavern. The reason that we want to do that is that we have so many rounds of golf now being played at Data that people aren't coming in at 2 or 2:30 finishing up. They're coming in at 4 and 4:30. So they're sitting there having a drink, enjoying their cocktails and their goldfish, and it's dinner time. And those tables are also under demand for our members. And nobody wants to tell a member, hey, could you get up and leave? We want you to be able to sit there. You should sit there till midnight, you know, if we were open that late, but you could sit there till like 7 or 8 o'clock at night. You should be able to enjoy yourself. We looked at that Tide's Edge Grill and said, well, it's overflow for hamburger night and we use it for fine dining. But what if we had a lively sports bar there? And then our pub became our kind of more refined, quieter, more upscale restaurant, so that we had 2 very distinct areas with 2 very distinct menus, finer, quieter, nicer food, and then kind of a pub grub menu and sports bar. To do that, we'd have to gut the kitchen because, again, our kitchen is going to be too challenged to serve 2 restaurants. We then refresh our, what I call our Irish pub decor, to make the dining room look more like it's sitting in the coast of South Carolina. That is a very small investment comparatively. It's a refresh. It's paint. It's better carpet. I know you all want to keep that green carpet, but it's going. A new bar top, something beautiful bar. We would keep the bar in the main dining room. To tear it out would cost a lot of money. We just don't think we should spend that money. It's a waste of dollars, frankly. Plus, it would be nice to have a bar in there. New bar top's fairly inexpensive. And then finally, and importantly, we would address our clubhouse's renovation needs. The electricals, the mechanicals, the HVAC throughout the entire clubhouse need to be addressed, as well as the kitchen. It means closing the entire clubhouse for close to a year at least, which is why we need that second kitchen at the pool. Our project cost for the entire kitchen clubhouse reno at 8 to 10 million. That is an estimate based on square footage, because the proposal is to, at least as we're looking at this now, is to maybe hold this off for a few years. It's not going to, kitchen's not going to catch fire. It can wait a few years. Right now, it's an aspirational project. At some point, it's going to become a necessary project. We want to get it scheduled and done before it becomes necessary. So here's the idea of what we could have for our new sports bar. Currently, we have this pretty little area in the Tide's Edge Grill. We get a bar. Fun thing is, I told the architect when he first came out, I said, you know that line from Jaws, we're going to need a bigger boat. Well, we're Data. We're going to need a bigger bar. So, and somebody told me in one of the other meetings, do we really need this extra bar? And then I talked to a former board member and she said, you know, there was debate about whether we even needed a bar in the pub at one point. And she said, it's turned out okay. Yeah, we need another bar. So one of the things we said, let's see how we can do this without spending a whole lot of money. What do we already have as assets and how do we use them better? We walked outside the Tide's Edge Grill and recognized that we have a roof, we have a patio, we have supports. All we need to do is screen this area in and put a bar on the other side. Not all that expensive to do. We could have tables out here. Sonia Fales was up in North Carolina, was at a club, and it has exactly what we were talking about. She rather excitedly sent me this photo. Ours would have screening, but this is pretty much what we're talking about for the new sports bar. We could start out with something pretty simple, a hot dog bar with toppings, gourmet toppings, a salad bar with lots of different salad choices so that it doesn't tax our kitchen as we redo the kitchen. And here's the architectural design. What we would do is put a big bar here. We'd actually knock out the wall for the private dining room and create a little sitting area, sort of like the old Bull House. So if you want to just sit on a sofa or a big chair and have a cocktail, you could do that. Put some tables and chairs there, some banquette seating. The fireplace that's there is up here. We want to put a little wood floor, so maybe we could have live music there. We then move the new private dining room into where we have buffets. We'd have to do some good soundproofing because we want to keep the noise from spilling into the pub. But this is a bigger room. We leave some wide openings here so that you could use this as spillover space for the new grill. And we'd also leave wide openings here leading to the pub so that you could use it for a buffet if you wanted to. It would open up into the new screened-in patio. And importantly, it would also let us build an entrance right down here as the Carolina room. And currently, the only way to get to the Carolina room and the clubhouse between them is through our kitchen. And we do not want members walking through the kitchen with sharp knives, hot flames, and a slippery floor at times. So that gives us an entrance that we really need to have. We also have that little outdoor patio there, the outside the screening that we could put a few tables. Whoops. It's only too fast. In summary, our members told us dining is really important to them. We can make some long-term improvements with very minimal investment. So expanding the Cotton Dyke Deli and building the kitchen there, renovating the top patio is phase one. The sports bar and the Tide's Edge Grill, renovating the kitchen and the clubhouse are part of phase two. And finally, before I turn it over to Pink to give you all the numbers I know you've been waiting to hear, I know that you're getting a lot of projects and you're going to get a lot of numbers thrown at you, and it can be a little overwhelming. It certainly has been for us as board members as we were trying to prepare this. and try to simplify it and figure out how to present it. But this is also a really exciting time in Data. We are really fortunate to be here now. We have a chance to fix up our community for the future, to preserve and maintain it. Every day we all drive across a bridge somebody else built for us. So what we do today is it's gonna right size our community. We know how big we're gonna be now, and it's gonna enhance our own property values. We're all owners of this island. When people come here to look at Data, they don't come to look at my house and just say, hey, I want to buy that house. They look at the community first, and then they look for a house there. So what we're talking about, just as we maintain our own property values, we're talking about projects here that we think will enhance and maintain your property value. You're going to tell us what you think needs to be done and how much you want to spend. But you asked us for some ideas. That's what we're giving you. And now Hank is going to tell you how much it's going to cost you. Thank you.
You. I've been sitting here for 2 hours trying to think of how I was going to respond. All week, Barbara was talking about having the Notre Dame game on. Now I knew that was the Notre Dame Ohio State game. So I'm big enough to stand here and say, congratulations on being this much better.
Yeah. Go Irish.
Anyhow, thank you very much. I do that? Yeah, I did that. Okay, a couple things before we start. We throw assessments around like everybody knows exactly what they are. The assessments that we use here are annual assessments. So if you were to sell your house, it's not your assessment forever. That transfers to the new owner. Unlike the other speakers, I don't have a lot of pretty pictures. I don't have a lot of words either. What I have is numbers. I'm going to try to present them from 10,000 feet. We have all the detail you'd ever want to see. 60 you were saying yes. The other 40 you're saying, well, how many ceiling tiles are there? So anyway, I'm going to provide a view from there. If you want more detail, we have it. We're happy to do it, but we're not going to do it in this presentation. We've talked about the bridge. It's an absolute necessity. The cost of missing out is not. Oh, the other thing, and again, I apologize. I am going to show you financing costs as well as project costs. So where we talked before of a $16 million bridge, I'm showing you as a $23 million bridge, right? That's financing at 7%. So, that's the true cost, right? We're going to finance that bridge. We think as we've laid it out, about 36% of you member assessments. 48% of that is initiation fees. We've had 50 to 60 people move out every year, 50 to 60 new owners. The initiation fee, we voted last year to partially fund the bridge from those initiation fees. We think that almost covers half of the cost of it as we've laid it out. And then reserves will fund the rest of it. So what does that mean for you? This is where we are as we stand now, right? You pay $5,004 in DIC dues. Your assessment for the DIOA is $3,200. So in 2023, this current year, you paid $8,204. X all of your amenities, right? Play golf, you play tennis, you pay that on top of that number, but you pay $8,204 regardless. If we do nothing, what happens? Well, if you've come to any of the presentations, you know our insurance costs have gone crazy. Right? They've quadrupled in the last 2 years. So four times as high as they were 2 years ago. That's going to be reflected in your base dues next year. Inflation is, normally we try to target a 3 to 5% increase. DIC base due is going to go up about 10% because of inflation, and because of that, hundreds of thousands of dollars that we have to make up for the insurance costs. Insurance costs come in on the DIOA side as well. There aren't as many properties that are involved with that, so it's a little bit less, a little under 7% for the DIOA side. So that the assessment, we estimated $3,420. And the big star there, I think the bridge assessment would be about a $1,280 annual assessment. So if we do nothing except build the bridge, it goes from $8,204 currently to $10,250 in 2024. So let's look at the cost again. The numbers that I'm showing you, cost including interest costs. Oregon River Landing, about $2.8 million. That was the stuff that Bill talked about. With dry expansion phase 1, $3.9 million. That's what Scott talked to you all about. We're going to assess members for about half of the cost of that. Initiation fees providing a little over a third. On the club side, the phase 1, the deli expansion, the new kitchen in there, the outdoor seating, about $3.2 million. Community center, all in, about $13.3 million. And then the phase 2 clubhouse dining, about $14.4 million. So how do you swallow all of this? How do you put this together in something that makes sense, right? Yes. Chew carefully, right?
Yeah.
It's a big goal. I'm sorry. So funding cost, member assessment, predominantly coming from members and 75% coming from members. So lots of variables, lots of moving pieces, not the least of which is cost of financing, which we've estimated at 7%, but that's a big difference. If it, turns out to be 8 or 6, makes a big difference. So again, we're going to provide bundles, which we think make some kind of sense. I'm going to explain part of the logic of that and the way we did it, but we're coming to you guys to give us, it doesn't make sense. I'd rather you did it this way. That's the kind of feedback we'd really like to elicit from you. So the first bundle, which if you add that up and add in the bridge, round numbers, very round numbers, project costs, not all in costs, about a little over $20 million. We expect that to be a six-year project, after which we'll reintroduce the things that we defer at that time. All right. So the first bundle says 6 years, but you've deferred about $30 million of project costs to some further date. So it's actually, if you look at it, implied there is another 10 years on the back end of that, right? Second bundle takes in the community center and everything in bundle 1. So what you're doing is going from $20 million project cost to $30 million project costs, but you're still deferring $20 million till, and again, another 10-year project. So that again is a 16-year all-in project, but you deferred decisions on the other 2. Bundle number 3 takes everything together, sequences it, and shortens the time frame. So one of the big variables is how much interest costs you pay. You saw the difference between project costs and actual all-in costs. Bundle 3 compresses that into 10 years and does all of the projects in sequence as makes sense. Again, as Barbara was saying, makes sense to build the other kitchen in the Cotton Dyke Deli before you have to deal with the kitchen in the clubhouse. You know, and the real challenge when you put these things together is keeping your aspirational projects aspirational, that they don't turn into the bridge and be mandatory projects that you have to do now. You have far less flexibility when you have to do it than when you can sequence it. So that's why they were laid out in that basic period. And I told you I didn't have a lot of words, so I'm going to go to numbers. All right, bundle one. That's the bridge. The Cotton Dyke Deli portion of that runs about $360 a year to members. That is offset by the fact that the cart path loans. So that's the $300 that you're seeing as a minus up there, just to show you that things actually do expire sooner or later, right? And then the owners association portion of that, the Morgan River Landing parts, the parking, the paving, the gazebo and what have you, it's about $400. So
But if I'm a DIOA member and I'm not a DIC member, then I can say, delete these things off of my payments, or,
well,
see, not everybody is.
let me come back to that after. But yeah, so the DIOA portion of it would apply, right? Bundle two, taking all of that and the community center, you see the difference in the DIC portion there. Goes up to $2,000 from $360 or something in that neighborhood. And the overall cost jumps to $12,414. Bundling it all together, shortening the time frame, the overall cost is not a whole lot different. It's $12,410. Gives you on the one hand an idea of how much interest costs really make a difference in the project. But that puts everything in the 10-year loop. How does Daltas stack up relative to its competitors in the area? This is just a simple bar graph saying what are our fees and expenses relative to Colleton, Berkeley Hall, Bill Fair, Kalawasi, Long Cove, The Landing, and Moss Creek. We're, and I always hesitate to say this, relatively less expensive than most of our peers. Even with the currently, you're absolutely right. But even if you were to take the full bundle three, we're still in the ballpark. We're certainly not outside the range of what our peer group is. So here's probably the slide you've been waiting for me to talk about. It just puts everything on one page. Didn't want to lead with that because there's an awful lot of numbers up there, but you can see we're at 8204 today. If we do the bridge, we go up to 8970 in 2024. The insurance costs and the bridge costs. Sorry. First one's without the bridge, second one's with the bridge. I got ahead of myself. With the bundle, I look at bundle one as bang for your buck, if you will. For $500, you get the Cotton Dyke Deli and the Morgan River Landing things, and paving, the parking, the reorganization, paths from Island Circle out to the water, or not a tremendous amount of additional monies on a monthly basis. Bundle two, bundle three turn out to be remarkably similar. as they're laid out. As many numbers as I want to throw at anybody. So, yeah, let me talk to that. The base dues and the base assessments will go up 3 to 5% as they normally would on an annual basis. The rest of the numbers remain for the term.
Six or 10?
Well, six for the one, 6 for two, followed by
An additional 10.
the additional projects that are deferred. And so the deferral is a question of, what's the expense 6 years from now? What's the interest rate environment?
No, I understand that, but if we choose bundle one, you're locked into that for 6 years, assuming you do nothing.
Correct. Base dues and the base assessment
Yeah.
will go up with inflation, but
Understood that,
but the other numbers are
6 years.
good. Yes.
I agree.
So we're gonna go to Q&A here in just a minute. First of all, I know this is a lot to take in. Thank you for being here. We managed to finish a little under schedule. Hallelujah for that. Also wanted to thank the people. There's a lot of people in the back room that serve on your board of directors who serve on these ad hoc committees. You sent them away a year ago and said, go see what this place could be someday, and they've done that. Now it's up to you to give us input. We want to get better. We want to improve our offering to the membership in 1 month from today at these town hall meetings that we're going to have at the end of October. We need your input. We want it, put it on your forms. So thanks to all these individuals.